What's going on, everybody? Align Gonzalez here, and you are listening to the Muscle Monsters Train Hard, Eat Big, Get Jacked podcast. In today's episode, I have a guest that I'm very, very pumped up about. His name is Kyle Hunt. He's the owner of Hunt Fitness, a certified personal trainer, and highly, highly sought out after strength and conditioning coach. And he also runs a YouTube channel that I watch, Hunt Fitness TV. What's going on?
What's going on, man? That was an epic intro. I love it.
So for those who are listening who aren't familiar with who Kyle Hunt is, why don't you tell us a little bit about, who you are, how you got into fitness, and what some of your goals are right now? I know you're getting ready to do another powerlifting meet, and what some of your goals are with the business as well.
All right, cool. Yeah. Well, my fitness journey started back in high school. And like a lot of kids, I was, the tiny, small kid. I wrestled all throughout, since I was like 5 years old. And I was a sophomore in high school wrestling 96 pounds. So, I was a small kid. And so after the season, I was like, you know what? I really need to put on some muscle, get in the weight room. So, following the season, just got in the weight room, worked out with the wrestling team. And then immediately I knew that this was something I was going to, really take to and love. And really just took it from there. I mean, I pretty much from that point, from the first time I walked into the weight room, fitness and strength training and powerlifting and just strength and conditioning in general and nutrition has been a huge passion of mine. As far as currently, like you said, I'm getting ready for a powerlifting meet. I recently switched over to the USAPL for 2016. So my big goal is to compete in Raw Nationals, which was in October of 2016. And, ultimately win a national championship. But short-term goal is just January 23rd is my next powerlifting meet. So really I'm like 5.5 weeks out, just training hard for that. And powerlifting is pretty much 100% my training focus, which is nice because in the past, like I said, I had a lot of different things I was interested in, more just general strength and conditioning, kind of a little bit of aesthetics, a little bit of strength, did a ton of conditioning stuff as well. And then over like the last year, it's just been focused on powerlifting, which makes it nice. As far as the business goes, really just trying to expand and grow and help more people. I mean, the coaching side of it has been great, and I've done that for probably about 5 or 6 years now. Really one of the OGs of the online fitness coaching. It seems like, everybody's an online coach now, but when I started it, I definitely wasn't the first. So, I don't want to give people the wrong idea, but it definitely wasn't as prevalent as it is today. Now pretty much if you have any type of online following, you're an online coach. If you
have six-pack abs, you can sell meal plans now.
That's more than enough to sell So I've done that, and I'll always do that because I really enjoy that. But I want to branch out a little bit more. I have a couple projects, couple ebooks in the works. Online site. I ran a subscription site in the past, and I'm redoing that completely. So really on the business end, trying to help more people. Because obviously coaching is great, and it's one-on-one, and you can really transform someone's life that way. However, you're limited on how many people you can actually, affect. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely. Yeah, I know. I agree 100%. I started with not necessarily online coaching, but I created, like programs that people could buy because I found that, like you were saying, you can serve more people that way. I did do some of the one-on-one coaching, and I still do. However, I only open it up for a certain period of time each year. And then I'm also working on a membership site where, all the training will be periodized, and they'll get, all kinds of bonuses and stuff like that. So I kind of walk them through the process without having to have that one-on-one connection, on the daily basis. That's going to take a lot of my time away from helping more people. So that's pretty awesome, man. Yeah. So you also mentioned that you are competing now in the USAPL, and that's something that I do. Both the meets that I've done have been in the USAPL. Nowhere near as strong as you are. However, I do get pretty close to a 2 times body weight bench press. And that's what I want to talk about today. You went from, you were saying about 96 pounds in high school. You are roughly about 165 now. And you recently hit a 365 pound bench press, which is insane. That's over 2 times body weight. Most people will never even hit 2 times body weight, let alone over that. Have you always been a strong bencher, or is that something that didn't initially come easy to you? And if it didn't, what would you say were the main contributing factors to a great bench?
Oh, well, before I get started, I got to set the record straight here. It was actually 375 pounds.
Oh, shit.
At my last meet, I hit a 375 paused bench, which is, I mean, really, when you're a power lifter, at least this is my opinion, I mean, I put all the emphasis on meat lifts. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, I tweeted about this last night because it just seems like there's an inverse relationship to what people, how much people put emphasis on their gym PRs to what they lift in a meet. You know what I mean? So it's like the more people talk about their gym PRs, the worse they do at meets. But so my best meet bench is 375, but I have hit a 390 just touch and go, all about 165. But to get into your question about have I always been strong, so I'll take you back to when I was 96 pounds wrestling. And obviously as a 96-pound kid, it's not like I was walking into the gym and, you know, putting up 225 for reps or anything, because obviously that would be like impossible. But I will say that I'm built really well to bench press, so I don't want to have people, you know, think the wrong opinion. When I first came in, obviously I wasn't that strong because, I mean, I only weighed 96 pounds. However, I took to benching pretty well, initially at least. When I first got in the weight room, I, you know, gained strength pretty quickly. However, then I found, you know, over the years that initial surge in my bench press quickly plateaued. But like anything, I mean, you hit plateaus. And then I really just, for years, I couldn't really make the type of progress I wanted until one day I don't know why I got thinking this, but I was like, you know what, maybe just the one bench press session a week isn't the right way for me. So as soon as I started increasing frequency on the bench press and really just pushed the volume is when I responded really well. And that's when my bench is, you know, what it is today.
Awesome, man. So genetically, you were built to bench. However, that didn't mean that you could just go from, benching 95 to 390 in a year.
Yeah.
You still gotta put in the work. The training has to be on point. The technique has to be on point. And you guys can't tell now because you're just looking at Kyle's head, but he's actually in really good shape. And most of my guys are not necessarily power lifters, although they are interested in building strength. So let me ask you this. There's a lot of debate, but in your opinion, do you think that the bench press is a good exercise for chest development, not just strength alone?
Well, it seems with the bench press, you're either in one of two camps. It seems like you either love it and the bench press is, you know, the best for everything, muscle gain, strength, everything, or you're on the other side and you're like, the bench press isn't really that important. It's, you know, not that good as a muscle builder. It's more for powerlifting. And, obviously I love the bench press, but here's the one thing. The bench press is great for muscle building. However, you have to use the right form, because a lot of people that's one thing I think powerlifting has kind of influenced into the bodybuilding community a little bit better is, technique, because a lot of bodybuilders just kind of do the flared elbows and they don't really have their technique dialed in. They don't have an arch, don't have the scapula retracted, the shoulder blades retracted. And at that point, it becomes almost like a front delt or a shoulder exercise as much as it is a bench press, basically a chest exercise. So to answer your question, yeah, I think it's great for muscle building. However, you got to use the right form, and progressive overload and volume is still going to be what's most important. So, and that's why it's a really good muscle builder, because the bench press is very susceptible to adding volume and adding weight. I mean, you're going to be able to use more weight on a bench press than you can on, a cable crossover. You know what I mean? So you're going to be able to use more volume. So yeah, in that, respect, I think it is good for muscle building as well.
So that leads me into my next question then. And you mentioned a few of the reasons, but for somebody who's interested in aesthetics, but not necessarily able to build their chest much, and maybe somebody who's benching regularly, What would you say is like the main reason, just one reason that people aren't getting that spillover from strength to muscle mass in their chest?
I would say volume. I mean, I think volumes, when you look at hypertrophy research, volume tends to be one of the most important factors. So volume meaning weight times sets times reps. So overall tonnage or volume. And I think a lot of people don't actually push the volume side of it. Most people just come into the gym and do 3 sets of 10. I mean, that's kind of the general sets and rep scheme. However, I mean, this isn't just for the bench press. This is for, squats, deadlifts. I mean, pretty much any exercise that you want to build muscle using, you got to push the volume. So don't be afraid to, go outside the norm and do, 5 sets of 10 or, 6 sets of 3, but push the weight, and then progressive overload as well. So each week you need to be doing more, whether it's more sets or reps or more weight or, however you want to go about that, but you got to do more.
Now, let me ask you something real quick in regards to, we're talking about sets times reps. Are you an advocate of percentage based, or do you think guys should just go in there and maybe follow some kind of an RPE scale? What's your take on that?
So I'm a big advocate of percentage based stuff. I use that for most of my clients. A lot of my programs are percentage based. However, with that being said, the one downside to it is obviously you're going to have good days and bad days. However, with percentages, at least I think it brings your bad days up to a standard, and then your good days, it levels them out to where sometimes when you have a really good day, you train a little bit too much, and then that affects, the following training session or the following week. So I think percentages at least give you something to, like, a standard to go by. You know what I mean?
Right.
And another thing is when you don't have a percentage or you don't have a way of determining the amount of weight you're using, it's really hard to, create that progressive overload. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, you can't just add weight in, random order every week because you're going to hit a plateau really easily. But with percentages, it's super easy to say, hey, here's week 1 of the program. By week 5, you're going to be here with that built-in, progression. So I am an advocate of that. RPE scale works as well. I think it's a little bit more of an advanced technique because you really, to really dial in an RPE scale, you have to have a really good understanding of yourself and your own fatigue and how many reps you can get. Because I think if you're a new trainee or a beginner especially into the strength world of powerlifting, it's hard to know, how many reps you really have in the tank. Sometimes people are like, oh, well, that was a RPE of 7, but then, they really could only got like 1 more rep. You know what I mean? So
yeah. It's funny that you say that because when I was doing my first powerlifting meet, they just happened to be running a study at that meet that I got to be a part of. And the study was they had some mechanism attached to the bar, and they would see the speed of the bar. And then we would tell them, okay, well, this felt like an RPE, whatever. Well, like every single lift I did, whether it was my first attempt or the last, despite being, 20 to 40 pounds difference, it was always, for me, it was a 10, that was a 10 for sure. I was done, so it's extremely hard to gauge. Now I can go in the gym and say, oh, I know I definitely can do 1 more, but then that's it. But it's hard to do that on a consistent basis, especially when you're alternating, the amount of weight or the intensity rather. So, but getting back to the bench pressing, we just talked about, what guys are not doing, to build their chest while bench pressing. And we know that it's a good tool for building your chest. And, you talked about some of the things like, your shoulder blades not being retracted. What are some actionable steps that people could go into the gym like right now, today, and do in their bench press to make it better?
Well, I think I'm just going to talk about form because, one of the things that with bench pressing, I think more than anything else, you can take someone who, if their form's, we'll say subpar, say they go to a seminar with a poor bench technique, and then someone there teaches them, dials it in. They could probably gain, a person could walk into the gym and put 30, 40 pounds on their bench just with good technique. It's not so much deadlift and squat. I don't know if you agree, but I think, I think that's the way it goes. So just touching on form a little bit, the first thing is to remember that the bench, although, we talked about it as a chest exercise, chest builder, that's what it's typically thought of, but it's actually a full body exercise. So it starts with your feet. You want to have good feet placement. And whether you keep your feet flat, like USAPL recommends or requires, or you keep your feet tucked, doesn't really matter. Either way, whatever's more comfortable. But however, you need your feet in a good position to where you can get a lot of leg drive. So you want to keep right from your toes on up to your quads, hamstrings, glutes, everything is going to be super, super tight, really engaged. So once you get your lower body set, then like we talked about with the scapula retracted, you want to have your shoulder blades pushed together as much as possible. And for one, it's a lot healthier. It's a lot safer that way. For two, it decreases the range of motion. So when you have your shoulder blades out, obviously it's a long range of motion. When you have them retracted, your chest up, shortens range of motion. And talking about that, another way would be when you have your shoulder blades retracted, it also creates that arch that you see. And that arch, again, cuts down on the range of motion. So just those 3 little points, just engage your lower body, keep your shoulder blades retracted, and bring your chest up in a nice arch. That'll put, easily some weight on your bench without even gaining any strength. It's just technique.
Yeah, for sure. I agree 100%. So with those technique tweaks, guys are going to say, well, I'm not a power lifter, so I'm not trying to, push maximal amounts of weight. So what would you say to those guys? I personally, I'm a huge advocate of, turning the bench to what it's supposed to be, a full body movement. A lot of people don't understand why, because they feel, if I use too much leg drive, then I'm not really getting too much chest work or whatever the case may be. The legs are doing a lot of the work. But why don't you touch on that a little bit?
Well, the answer to that, or what I would say to that, is the bench press is a full body exercise. So it's not really designed to be an isolation movement. You don't want to think about it as, well, I want to isolate my chest, because that's not what it's designed to do. It's designed to, really maximize the amount of weight you can push. So like we talked about earlier with volume, when you lift more weight, that's another way of doing more volume, and volume increases hypertrophy. So the idea with the bench press is you want to just be able to lift as much weight as possible. And in turn, when you do use leg drive, you're using more weight, your chest is also going to be activated more. However, when you really get into isolation stuff, think of it this way. Bench press, focus on weight, and then when you're done with the bench press, then you can do the isolation movements and focusing on really isolating the chest. But the bench press should be weight driven.
I agree 100%. And not so much an analogy, but a point that I was trying to make when I was trying to explain in a video one time about, using leg drive and using all of these technique tweaks to get a bigger bench versus, guys who might, for example, not use leg drive or just put their feet up on the bench and bench press that way. And it's something that a lot of people don't talk about, is the difference in the negative aspect. So for example, someone who is training with their feet up on the bench and they're using, say, for example, 185, they'll be able to push the 185, get a good pump in their chest. But on the negative, which is a pretty important part, in my opinion, of the lift, their chest is only bearing that load of the 185. And then so we take a guy who's doing, he's got his good leg drive, he's set up properly. Now he's doing 250 for the same amount of reps just because his technique is solid. And now on his negative, he's bearing the load of the 250. So that's going to actually be, obviously more volume and, more growth. What do you think about that?
Well, the eccentric part of the lift creates the most muscle damage, which also leads to hypertrophy. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Because, and just in general, when you're lifting more weight, with any exercise, you're going to have more eccentric loading. So why wouldn't you want to use more weight? When the option is more weight versus less weight, you're probably, with everything else equal, more weight is going to be better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. But like I said, just, some people have this mentality of, I need to just isolate it. But when they have that mentality, they're eliminating all the other important factors, like, the total volume, the negative, the eccentric, like we just talked about. Now, we talked a lot about technique, and I've heard you say the word volume over and over. So let's talk a little bit about training. What kind of training style, maybe frequency, intensities, would you recommend if somebody who's already got their technique down and they are a little bit more advanced and they're trying to, build their chest, but also increase their bench?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, when my bench press really took off was when I increased frequency. When I went from only benching once a week to twice a week to even 3 times a week like I do now is really when I took off. And I know I've mentioned volume a lot, and that's one of the reasons why increasing frequency works, because how much volume can you really get in only training your bench press or training your chest once a week? When you do it twice a week or 3 times a week, you're invariably you're going to get more volume in. So I think that's huge. But I also like to use daily undulating periodization. So where, when I say 3 times a week, I'm not doing the same amount of intensity, same amount of, weight, reps, sets. It's going to be different every time. So you're going to hit a bunch of different rep ranges. And, I think that's really beneficial for not only just strength, but muscle size as well. Because there's a benefit to every rep range. So you don't want to leave anything out. But I would say frequency's the number one thing, so yeah.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit into the rep ranges. So I'm someone who follows DUP, not in the traditional sense, but we both know that DUP just means that we're undulating the rep ranges, not necessarily that we're benching X amount of times per week.
Yeah.
But I did used to bench 3 times a week, and the way I had it set up was, maybe I'll have a hypertrophy day, a power day, and then a strength day, where essentially what happens is, you're adjusting the volume and the intensity is going to change from day to day. Is that similar to how you're training right now?
Yeah, that's real similar. Like we said, with DUP, it's really more of a style of training than a program. Some people are like, oh, you want DUP? Well, it's like flexible dieting. It's just a system of training, kind of like flexible dieting is a system for nutrition. But yeah, really you can do it any way you want. Really, with the undulating rep ranges and intensity and volume and etc., is really just you're picking. It could be even twice a week, and you're just doing 2 different training sessions. So it could be one day is more hypertrophy, like sets of 10 or 12. One day could be like a speed power day where you're doing sets of 1, 2s, or 3s, but with 50 to 60% of your max, just going for explosiveness, or like a pure strength workout, 6x3, going heavy, 90% of your max or whatever. So really it's just, you can set it up whatever you want. You could even do 3 hypertrophy sessions, but just alternate the rep ranges from like 10 to 15, you know what I mean? So a lot of times people think DUP is like strictly, like a powerlifting style program, but really it could be good for hypertrophy as well. Nothing says that you have to, max out on DUP or have to have a powerlifting focus to it. It's just how, a lot of people do use it.
Yeah, for sure. And that, now that you mentioned that, that it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be catered towards powerlifting. And because we're talking a lot about guys who want to build their chest, from an aesthetics perspective, I also want to mention too that the strategy that Kyle just talked about you don't even have to bench press. You could use daily undulating periodization, with your dumbbell presses. If you have whatever kind of injury, or maybe you just don't like to bench press, or you just don't want to bench press. And the same goes for the squat and the deadlift. These are not exercises you have to do, obviously, unless you're a power lifter when following DUP. And that's a big, big misconception that people have. They also have the idea that, that DUP is just, like you said, this one set program where they're benching, squatting, and deadlifting X amount. And it's just not that, but I think I've taken enough of your time, dropped some value bombs for sure. And I think this is going to be one of the more popular episodes. People really interested in building a bigger bench, bigger pecs. But if someone wants to either hire you, just follow you, or even just subscribe to your YouTube channel, which I absolutely love, where can they find you?
So my home base is pretty much kylehuntfitness.com. So my website, if you go there, you'll be able to get links to, everything. I'm on pretty much every social media. Like you said, YouTube's Hunt Fitness TV. Instagram at Hunt Fitness, Twitter at Hunt Fitness Facebook page. So pretty much I'm on everything, either Hunt Fitness or Kyle Hunt. But yeah, but thanks for having me on. Definitely fun. I love talking about bench pressing and lifting in general. It's fun.
Not a problem, man. And just for the listeners, if you are listening to the podcast, head over to musclemonsters.com/EP18. That's EP and the number 18. I'm going to link all of Kyle Hunt's social media, his website, his YouTube channel, etc. I'm also going to give you guys a free gift that you guys can download. It's actually created by Kyle for you guys. It's a how to start flexible dieting guide. Am I right about that, Kyle?
Yeah, you are.
All right, cool. So I'm going to link that also on the show notes page. So he's going to give you guys that for free. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, I'm going to put the link to his YouTube channel down below. I hope you guys enjoyed. Had a blast talking to you, Kyle, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Awesome. Thank you.